Yo, what is up, guys? It's Pedro here, and today the Washington Post came out with a report that many Commanders offensive players are frustrated by the offensive play calling by Scott Turner. So we're going to talk about that in today's video and if there's a chance that Scott Turner gets fired this offseason. So if you guys are new, make sure to subscribe for Washington and NFL content on the road to 11,000 subscribers. It takes 1 second. Also hit that like button and that notification bell. We'll also be live today around 7 with Rio and maybe Juan as well, so make sure you guys pull up for that. So I didn't think I was going to make a video today, but then this came out, so I thought I should. So Sam Forte of the Washington Post tweeted this. Sources: Commanders players are frustrated by the offensive play calling. And there's a bunch of things in the story. We'll get into that. And he said, in the story, context and nuance, Washington has 3 connected issues on offense: play calling, quarterback, and line. And it's up to Ron Rivera to parse them and figure out a solution. And, that's assuming Rivera's here this offseason. And that's a pretty safe assumption. I think Ron Rivera will, there's a 90+% chance he's back just because of the ownership situation. He'll be back, but it doesn't mean Scott Turner needs to be back or some other coaches. I think Jack Del Rio's good for the most part. He's been solid this year. But there's some other coaches besides Scott Turner that I think they could move on from. So let's go through the story real quick. Shout out to the Washington Post for getting this story. Maybe this pushes, over the edge, Ron Rivera's thinking, and maybe it gets Scott Turner fired. Who knows? I just think we need a new offensive coordinator. So here's kind of what. I'll read a couple things. So later, tight end Logan Thomas was asked if he thought the play calling put players in the best position to succeed. And he said, the way I put it is, we got so much talent, we should be scoring more points than we have been. So he's not directly calling out Scott Turner, but indirectly he is. So 9 other players who spoke on the condition of anonymity to be candid about a coach expressed frustration with the play calling. They complain about predictability and abandonment of the game plan against Cleveland and Turner's tendency to deviate from plays that are working, which several players described as the coordinator outsmarting himself. They suggested Browns defenders had anticipated their plays in the loss that effectively ended the Commanders' season. That's 9 other players that spoke out. That's a lot. And I'm assuming most of the guys are offensive players, but there might be some defensive players. Even, if you watch the mic'd up from Chase Young, on the sideline, he was like, all right, I think the defense just came on a stop, got to stop. And they're like, now we got to score. They're not calling him out or anything, but you can tell, a few of them are frustrated. The offense isn't scoring. There's some other things right here. Despite Washington's significant investment in the offense last offseason, the unit has been a disappointment. The Commanders ranked 26th in the NFL in offensive points per game, 17.5, and 27th in expected points added, according to True Media, both step backs from 2021. And that's a big thing right there. You basically have the same quarterback as last year because, last year it was Fitzpatrick for whatever, and then you had Heineke for basically the whole season and 1 game of Garrett Gilbert. This year, you had some games with Heineke, or you had 6-ish games, 7 games with Wentz, the rest with Heineke. So basically the same quarterback play of last year, maybe a little bit worse with Wentz, but he did have a couple good games to start out the season. But Curtis Samuel is healthy for the whole year. You still have Terry McLaurin. You added Jahan Dotson. You added Brian Robinson. Logan Thomas was, I guess healthy for the whole year. And yes, you had injuries this year, but you had injuries last year too. Think about it. Curtis Samuel out for basically the whole year last year. They had the same issues at center last year. They were starting Keith Ishmael for a few games, for a decent amount of games. And they had other issues on the offensive line as well. And tight ends, they were starting Ricky Seals-Jones. The injuries were a problem last year. So they took a step back this year with, I would argue, a better group, maybe besides offensive line. And that's Rivera's fault for kind of dismantling that group, not bringing back, Eric Flowers. But Scott Turner took a huge step back this year because he did better last year with way worse weapons, in my opinion. Yes, they're saying here, quarterback, the blame's on the quarterback play as well. Not just, necessarily Taylor Heineke, because Taylor Heineke wasn't expected to come in here and be a great starter. He was a backup for a reason. So it's on kind of Rivera and just the lack of great QBs in the NFL. Honestly, if you look at it, the state of the QB in the NFL, there's not that, the QB position is much worse now than it was 5, 6, 7 years ago. Let's see. The offense often fought uphill, had the league's worst offensive starting field position, so that kind of plays into it as well. But let's read some other things. So this week, players consistently pointed fingers at play calling, but acknowledged that there were other issues. Some said there was sometimes poor communication between offensive position groups, and they talk a little bit about this week. And they said if team owner Dan Snyder retains Rivera in the offseason, which seems likely, it will be the coach's responsibility to parse the offense's biggest problems and decide what to change. I really think that, and this is not in the story, this is me talking, I think a change is needed at offensive coordinator. Scott Turner's had 3 seasons here. Offense has not been good, and it's not improved. It's gotten worse over the 3 years. Change got to be made. You're not going to be able to change much on offense besides your offensive coordinator and QB. But QB, honestly, there's not much you can do to upgrade unless you land a big name like Lamar, or maybe you sign Derek Carr if he gets released. But that's really it. That is really it. So the big change you can make on offense, there's been one consistent thing the last 3 years, and that has been not the QB. That has been definitely not the QB. That has been offensive coordinator, and he's definitely not to blame for everything, but he's definitely has a part in the offensive struggles. And just sometimes it's obvious that you need they should be doing a certain thing, like in the Giants game, should have been running the football, and they didn't. Brian Robinson was averaging 7.5 yards per carry. And let me specify, they should have been running with Robinson, because they had Curtis Samuel had 5 carries for 1 yard. So they're running with him when they had Brian Robinson, who was just playing so much better. And then the one other thing about Scott Turner and his offense, it's hard to pick up for the QBs. We've heard it from Ryan Fitzpatrick, who played in just about every single offense in the NFL and came here and was not able to pick it up. Once the season started, still not had it. He didn't have it down. And of course, had that hip injury. Kind of heard a little bit of the same thing with Carson Wentz. And that's concerning, especially if we want to get a rookie QB in here. I want an offense that's somewhat easy to pick up. Obviously still a good offense, but when your offensive numbers have been terrible, and combine that with the offense being so hard to pick up, you can't have that. Okay, if the offense is really good and it's, a hard scheme to pick up, that is fine. You'll take that. You'll have to put more work in, but it's worth it at the end of the day. But when you have to put in more work to learn a worse offense, a terrible offense, it's not worth it, in my opinion. I'm trying to see. I didn't read this all the way through in the beginning, so I'm just trying to see if they had, said anything more about, player quotes and everything. Sometimes it feels like he expects adjustments from the defense, or he calls something just because we put it in that week. One player said, in the locker room, criticism of Turner started bubbling to the surface. Robinson, who finished with 7.4 yards per carry, but only 12 carries, harped on the play calling. I just got to play. I can't coach, he told reporters. Even when I do get frustrated about play calling, that's not my job. So regardless of how I feel during the game over certain plays, I just got to be where my feet are. And you can tell Robinson has been frustrated. Even he's been banged up, but even banged up, he wanted to go in on that 4th down play call, and they decide to do a toss to Jonathan Williams. Just doesn't make sense at all. And they said some of the plays that we had called there at the end, they're tough plays to beat cover 2 with, he said. That was Heineke. So even Heineke's kind of calling out Turner a little bit. Turner is as well, but that's to be expected. So a lot of guys kind of calling out Turner, some publicly, some indirectly, and then 9-ish players anonymously. Jeez. So I don't know. I think this honestly could put him over the edge to get fired. Another quote, it's your job to put these guys in better spots to be successful. The person said, are you doing everything you can to elevate this group? And he said, one guy said, I feel bad for Carson. One player said, I don't think we knew how to utilize him. Another player suggested Brown's loss wasn't on Turner. The player said Wentz, under pressure to save his career, seemed affected before the game even started. So obviously there's going to be a lot of different opinions, but you guys can see there's a lot of guys that are frustrated with Scott Turner. And I think like a lot of the fans are. I think there's probably 75, 80+% of fans that want him gone. And one thing that I do agree with right here from Mark Bullock, he says, Ron Rivera has spoken about asking opinions of his players regarding big decisions this season. QB changes, for example. Sounds like if he asked their opinion on changing offensive coordinator, the writing could be on the wall for Scott Turner. And that is definitely something where I think at least Ron Rivera has to think about it. Obviously, I want Scott Turner gone, but if Ron Rivera automatically comes back and says, on the first day, once the season's over, and they have they're talking with the media and they're asking him questions, let's say the media asks him, okay, let's say JP Finley asks him, will Scott Turner be back next year? And if he just says, yep, he's going to be back, I don't expect any changes to the coaching staff, that's ridiculous. We all want him gone, but at least have make a decision. Go through the thought process. Okay, should we have that debate in your head? Should we bring back Scott Turner or not? At least do that. Have a decision with talk with some of the players on the team, and just maybe even ownership. I don't think they need to, because he's going to be gone, and you don't want Dan's opinion anyways. But talk with maybe some of the scouts, the GMs and stuff, how they feel about Scott Turner, if they're utilizing the players correctly that they drafted. I don't think they are, and I just don't think a lot of situational play calling, it just doesn't work. And sometimes he tries to get too cute when he doesn't need to get too cute. Sometimes he does these creative play calls that work and they're at the right time, but I remember they did, I don't know what game it was, but it was 2nd and 3. I think they just had a 7-yard run. And easily, I think this was one of the Giants games. They could have easily ran the ball with Robinson and got a first down, but he decides to do a little flea flicker, and it didn't work out at all. I mean, it could have if it was a perfectly thrown ball, but it was going to be tough for Heineke to do that. And I don't think they got a first down on that drive. So that really hurt them. And just a lot of those situations, he doesn't use Terry well, in my opinion. A lot of times doesn't, get him enough targets, especially in the red zone. But that's kind of it on Turner. Tan Todd Podcasts right here. Where is it? Their tweet. They say, I think Scott Turner is gone. After reading the story, I think Scott Turner is fired next week. I hope. I never want to call for someone's job, but I think, he's made a lot of money. I think it's time to move on from Scott Turner and find someone else. Just something. It can be an internal promotion like Ken Zampese or someone totally different. Just bring someone in and change this offense up. It needs to happen. Scott Turner's had 3 years here. And yes, I know he doesn't have the best quarterback, but there's no, if he would have at least been a little bit better than last year, that's understandable. But he took a step back with better offensive weapons. You can't do that. You can't do it. So that's it for today's video. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe if you guys are new, and peace.